Hello everybody, welcome to today's video. TCS Infosys have announced their quarterly results in the last 1 week, and the CEOs have mentioned that the results are exceptional. On the other hand, the market is saying the results are pretty bad. Neither of them agree with each other, so what do?
We had an excellent full year performance in financial year 2023 with a growth of 15.4% in constant currency.
TCS has missed estimates. The IT bellwether missed the mark on margins and revenue growth. On constant currency terms, the revenue growth was at its slowest pace in 11 quarters.
Well, Infosys has reported rather disappointing set of numbers, just in line with what TCS has done.
In this video, we are going to talk about what are the reasons why these guys believe that the results are good, and on the other hand, the market believes that the results are pretty bad. Also, I'll add my analysis about a comment made by the Infosys CEO in his entire investor presentations conference. Well, I don't agree with one of his comments. In my 15 years of corporate experience, I've never seen these kind of comments. So we'll dig deeper into that in the later half of the video as well. So let's get started with what was happening in the first 3 months of this year. Very obvious, Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank and Credit Suisse, these collapsed, and there was a lot of fear as well amongst these industries. The banking, financial services, insurance, all these industries were gripped in fear. We need to understand that TCS and Infosys derive approximately 30% of their overall revenues from BFSI as a sector, banking, financial services as a sector. So what happens? If you are running a Kirana store and your biggest customer is facing problems, what will happen to your revenues? It will go down, or it will not meet the expectations. That is what is happening. Their biggest customer on the street, BFSI, they are struggling big time. And in fact, the CEO mentioned in one of his comments that the bad things were happening in Feb 2023, and by March 2023, the waters were pretty stable. Now, this definitely impacted them. On the other end, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, all these guys have went ahead and fired employees. Amazon, 27,000 employees. Facebook, 10,000. Salesforce, 8,000. Even Accenture has let go close to 19,000 employees. These are their own employees. Then what will happen to the subcontractors? These big tech companies have a lot of work outsourced to TCS, Infosys and other technology service providers. If they are not able to safeguard their own employees, they absolutely would not worry too much about these subcontractors. So from both these places, there was a lot of pressure for these guys, TCS and Infosys. Now, the second thing that you also need to realize is the utilization numbers were coming down. Now, what does utilization mean? Simple, if there are 100 people in a company, what percentage of them are actually working and what percentage of them are going and playing table tennis? In 2022, exactly a year back, this number was 87.5% for Infosys. That means 87% of the people are working actively on projects. And this quarter, the results that were announced yesterday or the day before, that number was 80%. So 7 percentage points drop. What does this mean? A lot of people are now sitting idle in Infosys and TCS and other IT services companies. They do not have active projects to work on. Now, this is concerning because within 1 year, the utilization rates dropped so much. And if this continues, these guys are not going to hire. Well, they don't want to add more people onto the bench. And that is another scary sign coming out of this particular investor relations meetings. The third thing that I also want to highlight is about the profit margins. Well, in 2022, for every 100 rupees they were earning, 23 to 24 rupees were their net profit or profit before tax. In 2023, the results announced last week, this number came down. Every year, the efficiencies should increase and the profits should increase. But this year, it is now 21% for Infosys. That was their biggest concern. In the investor conference call, close to 10 questions were catered around why is your operating margin down? What are you doing with respect to your operating margin? How do you want to improve it? So on and so forth. And that, in that context, there was a comment made by the CEO of Infosys.
We have several methods in which we can do better in that program, whether that relates to automation, it relates to pyramid, it relates to on-site mix, relates to subcontractors, relates to travel, and also relating to pricing and how we can drive that within our system, given the inflation that all of us have seen.
Now, what does this mean? Very clearly, he's saying that in my experience, I've never seen the CEOs coming out and saying what are the cost reduction methods that they are applying. Now, what do these three terms mean? On-site offshore mix reduction means they are going to reduce the number of people working on-site so that the numbers can be increased offshore and the costs typically are higher at the on-site. The second one, the pyramid. If there are 7 people working under a manager, they'll say, why don't you manage now 8 people, 9 people, so that end of the day, some managers are redundant and they can be fired. The third thing they mention is about the subcontractors. Just like how Facebook, Google, Amazon, they are cutting down their subcontractors, similarly, these guys are going to cut down on their subcontractors. No company, in my experience, has ever come out and said these are the 3 or 4 things that we are doing to reduce costs. Just look at this snippet from the HP CEO a few years back.
You know, one key component to your story has been cost reductions. Where are you at in your $800 million cost reduction plan?
And we took immediate actions, very deliberate actions to not just cut costs, because cutting costs is not the hardest thing you can do.
He's talking about cost reduction. He's talking about, hey, we are going to go through this cost reduction, improve our margins, etc., but he never talks about what are the exact tactics, exact strategies that they are going to utilize. Well, this is something weird. Usually these things don't happen. Now, moving on, what are the things that you can take away from this specific quarterly results? Number one, industry is still feeling the heat. You might say, hey, I'm an IT engineer. I don't care about what happens in the bank, but you need to worry about that because banks are the customers for these companies. Number two, it is not all bad news. These guys were also talking about increase in the revenues with respect to cloud. Now, Cloud 2.0 is the new thing. People are moving from Cloud 1.0, the basic cloud services, to now improving and increasing their efficiencies on their existing cloud infrastructure. And the third thing that I also want to highlight for you guys is please understand when the utilization numbers are low, if you are not working actively on any project, you might be first in the firing line. So go get yourself a project so that even if you want to search for a job, you can be relaxed and you can search for your job at your own pace. Thank you so much, guys. Please go ahead, press on that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye-bye.